Good morning, girls. Happy Tuesday. Hey, I hope you're having a fabulous week so far. It's exciting. We're getting close to Easter. Springtime is here. Flowers are blooming. It's been really good. We've got a couple areas in the world. Just keep them in prayer. There's a cyclone that has hit. A couple other things. I know Texas, for you girls that watch in Texas, we're praying for you. We know you guys have got some pretty severe weather coming again. And if you were impacted by the hail and everything last night, we lift you up with that. So it's just a tough time of year when the storms come through and seasons are changing and we just have to hang on. So but lifting y'all in prayer, just be safe out there. Listen to your warnings that are out there, and don't try to be a Wonder Woman, because we can't get through some of this stuff. But can't believe the hail that hit Texas. That was pretty substantial hail that actually busted all those windows and everything else this morning. So just lifting you up. But yeah, good morning. What an awesome thing to be a cheeky mama. Because the day starts earlier. You're full of energy because the first thing you do when you get up is you've got to care for them. Come spend time with God. Play with the pups. I mean, it's just a great thing. And then we can jump into business. So one of the joys and privileges of being an entrepreneur is that I get to do that. You know, I don't have to be in a stuffy office at 8 o'clock in the morning. It's amazing. So just good. Life is good, guys. But what I wanted to talk about today, because there's been something really bugging me the past couple weeks, and just trying to process it. Excuse me. So what I want to talk about and maybe talk about for the next couple days is actually talking about being a godly wife and what that means. Because I think as women we forget that, you know, we need to represent Christ not only in our church and our ministry and our business, but in our home. And sometimes we're just not doing that. And whatever the reason is, I don't know. But I'm going to read this first. We're going to spend some time in Proverbs 31. We all know that Proverbs 31 is the whole writing with the king's mother telling him this is a wife of noble character. And I know some of the things when we look at this is like, oh my gosh, how could one woman possibly do all this? And, you know, when I look at it, it's not that we're going to be identical to her, but I think it really gives us some direction and guidance about who we should be as a woman of God. And not, you know, we always talk about the Bible's our book of direction and instruction manual. And I think we're pretty much instructed here what our role is and how to behave as a godly wife. And the reason this is coming into play, actually, let me start off with the verses we're going to talk about today. Proverbs 31, starting in verse 10, and we're going to go to 12 today. So it says, starting in verse 10, a wife of noble character who can find? She is worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good and not harm all the days of her life. And that leads me to what's been on my mind. I sat in a study with some women because yes, I teach, but I also go because I need to be fed. And I witnessed the leader of the study in front of these women turn around and say, because her husband corrected her or was giving her advice or telling her how to get something done right, and she didn't like to be told what to do, that she wanted to punch him in the throat. Now, this bothered me for a couple reasons. Number one, I would never say that to my husband. Number two, I would never repeat it in public about my husband. And number three, we don't know the impact of those words that were made on other women. And number four, if there's children in the home, what are they seeing? Did they hear that? So that really has been bothering me a lot, and because I can't fathom doing that or saying that about my husband. Now, I'm not saying that our marriage is perfect. We do disagree on stuff, but we do not have that kind of behavior in our home. And if we did, I wouldn't be in this home. I come from a background of being beaten. So I totally get that whole aspect. But what really bothered me is that a woman would say that to her husband, and a woman would repeat it to another group of women. So let's take a look at that. Why is that wrong? So she got mad and said something. Well, there were other things said too. That's just the one that really stuck in my head, because if you know about the anatomy, and if you get punched in the throat just right, it actually can kill someone. So to me, I was really greatly offended and just got really quiet. And then I looked around the room knowing that many of those women were divorced and either getting married, remarried, or they were remarried already. Some of those women had experienced abuse in their life. And yet, this person thought it was okay to make that kind of a comment in front of people. If the Bible's telling us here in Proverbs 31, verse 12, she brings him good, not harm, all the days of his life, then how are we being a godly wife by the way that we react and talk to our husband? And it really made me think about, maybe it's the fact that as women, we've not been taught how to be a godly wife. It does not mean you roll over and play dead. It does not mean that you just hide in a corner and, like the architect I worked for before Christ, he told me that women were good for barefoot and pregnant, and that was it. So that's not the case here. I really believe that God has built up women, and some women, to be out there leading women's groups, leading children's ministry, that type of thing. You know, we're not leading the men, we're leading other women and children. I really believe that is the case. I believe that a woman of God is meant to be strong and powerful. I believe that she's supposed to thrive. I believe that God will call her into areas of ministry. But I don't believe, as a woman of God, number one, we should be reacting to our spouse that way. And number two, we should never be presenting or talking about our spouse in a negative manner in public. Because see what happens now is now the views of people become tainted because of the words you've said. So if you're hanging out with your girlfriends, ladies, and I have to drink my coffee, and I love my other mug. It says, throw kindness like confetti around. It's kind of cool. And the bottom of the mug, it has confetti. It's really cool. All right, so here's the deal. If we are not showing our husbands the respect and reverence that we should, because we need to understand our role in the house, ladies. Our role in the house is not to run the house. We are not the head of the house. And no, this doesn't mean that. I had somebody actually tell me that they were surprised with me because I wasn't involved with women's rights since I ran a business, that I should take the lead. And I said, no. My role as a woman, according to what God tells us, is to be the support. Now, obviously, if the husband is not managing the house, then yes, she needs to manage it. But I also believe in the Bible, and it tells us in Proverbs 31, that she does manage the house. She makes sure that the meals are cooked, the bills are paid, the house is clean, all of that, while the husband is earning the wages. Sometimes the household is flipped, where the woman is earning the wages and the husband's at home, and that's fine. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is understanding the order in our house, showing respect to our husband. And yes, girls, I understand that some of you may be in marriages where you're like, why would I respect that man? He's horrible. And I get that. I truly do get that. I believe that there are some marriages that are very damaged. But what I also understand, ladies, and I know this may be offending and really pissing somebody off, I get that. But I'm only speaking what the Bible has to say. Because what I believe is, our example, ladies, can change the dynamics in our house. So if I walk around being mean to my husband, saying disrespectful and hateful things to him, then I go out in public with the other girls and you hear this chatter about how horrible he is. What happens when he walks in a room? And maybe all of that chatter came because you had a fight. And it's not who he is. And yet you've tarnished him in front of other people. So you guys go out to lunch with couples, and all of a sudden everybody's looking at him like he's got some kind of disease. You know, his face is swollen up twice the size. I don't know. But we can't be tarnishing what people might think of our husband. All because we get mad at him. The Bible tells us she brings good and not harm all the days of her life. What that means to us girls, what that means. I'm trying to see if I've got extra notes in here. I decided here, I picked up the large print here. Look how big this thing is. That's what happens when you can't see well, right? Just trying to see. Okay. How far did I go? I'm really sorry. I start reading other verses and go, oh, we can talk about that. But I need to just stay focused on what we are. So when it says here that she is worth far more than rubies, it is a reference to the value that we have in our husband. See, because what I know for a fact, girls, in a marriage, you know, Greg and I have been married 16 years now. They never thought we'd make it past a year. We had a lot of people come against it. And it was a control thing. And that's because somebody in my life that I was accountable with, I wasn't accountable with them when I met Greg. I was accountable with somebody else. And they felt threatened. See, this is the trip we get on, right? And so she felt threatened that I talked to somebody else about the relationship. And when Greg proposed and we got married, I didn't get her permission. And so she vowed that we would fail our marriage. She also told me that I had to leave the church unless I left him. And I'm not really sure why all this was going on in her head. But it was. And my thing is, if God has called you together, no man should separate it. And the bad part was she had so much power inside that church that I couldn't even get to the people that I could, you know, just double check. And is this wrong? You know, am I wrong not to have passed it by her? But seriously, girls, she brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. How do you talk about your husband? How do you treat him when he comes home? Does your husband come home to a house that he feels relieved to be here? That he feels it's safe when he comes home? Because I know, girls, our husbands provide the security and being safe for us, but we also need to make sure that our home is a safe place for him. We're not nagging at him. We're not complaining to him. We're not moaning at him. We are not coming up to him and after he's worked his day, come on and say, you know, why isn't this done? Why isn't that done? Why isn't this done? Allow him to come home and breathe. Allow him to come home and put his feet up in the chair for a few minutes. Allow him to come home and go to the bathroom. I mean, girls, we've got to back off our men. What I do know is the more peaceful and safe I make my home, the better my husband comes home. Make sense? He can have a really bad day at work because of corporate politics. Come home, but he knows when he enters in that garage and starts coming into that door that there's peace in the house. Even if I've had a bad day, I try to make sure that he wants to be here, that it's peaceful. I don't have a big list of things for him to do. And now that I'm moving around a lot more, there's things that I do for myself that I probably shouldn't do because a lot of times I forget to move the step stool back into the extra room. And he's like, oh, what did you go get? I'm just trying to take care of myself so that you can come home and not have to worry about, oh, I need an envelope from that top shelf. But what does your husband come home to? What is your attitude with your husband? How do you talk about your husband? And if girls aren't married yet, but you're getting ready to get married, these are all great things to remember. Start your marriage right. Keep Christ in the center. Ecclesiastes tells us that a cord of three is not easily broken. And that's husband, wife, and God. But ladies, the verses say here, the first three, a wife of noble character who can find, she is worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good and not harm all the days of her life. And I love verse 11. Her husband has full confidence in her. I have to tell you, Greg has full confidence in me. He knows that anything that I set forward to do, I'm either called by God or it's something I have a real passion about. And the amazing part, because of the nature and the character and everything that we've built in this house, anything I step into, I have 110% support from my husband. He's at a point now where he fully sees the potential of ministry right now and reaching you ladies. That he is doing everything he can with our tax person to manipulate his taxes so that if I decide to quit my other business, I could do ministry full time and help women change their life. Because he believes in what I got here. He believes and he has seen that God is called. What does your husband say? How are you with him? Ladies, really, I want you to think about it. When you talk to your girlfriends about your husband, what are you saying? We all have fights. I know when we first got married, we had fights where both of us just wanted to walk away before we said something. But as we grew in our marriage together, we don't do those fights anymore. And the other thing that we promised, there was two things when we got married we said. One is, divorce is not an option. We knew that a marriage is going to take effort and work on both of our parts. That we're both going to have to make sure that God is in the center. We're both going to have to work at communicating with each other. We're going to both have to work at telling each other what we need, not expecting the other person to read our mind. And the other thing we promised each other is we will never go to bed angry. And we don't. We resolve all issues before we go to bed. Because what happens if you don't, girls, all of a sudden the enemy gets in there and he starts playing with your head. And he's going to start putting things in your head, and our minds are creative. We can come up with a lot of stuff. But if we resolve the issue the enemy has no space. And you can ask Greg. There's been times that he was done. He thought, okay, we're all set, right? Everything's resolved. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, we're not done. Because there was still something bugging me. And we laugh about it now. We don't have those days anymore. We don't have those days anymore. But it's funny because he's like, he knows that if I'm still mad because of something he did, and maybe he doesn't even realize he did it, we work it out before we go to bed. I have nothing negative to say about my husband. Aside from he cares too much about me. And how is that really negative, you know? I came through the double back fracture with my husband caring for me, doing everything for me for almost a year. He took care of the house, the laundry, the cooking, the dogs, the laundry, the grocery shopping. He made sure that I could get from point A to point B. He drove me everywhere I needed to go. He helped me up off of the toilet when I couldn't pull up on my own. He helped me shower when I had to get help in the beginning. Very humiliating for me. But my husband took care of his wife. And you know why he did it? Number one, he's a man of God. And number two, he made a promise to me when we got married that he would provide and take care of me. And that's just what we do. It was hard for me to watch him do that because I felt guilty that my husband worked all day long and yet still had to come home and take care of me. But he did it. I had so many women tell me, you know, gosh, I wish my husband would do that. But then I have to go back to that and say, what happens in the home? What setting have you created so that your husband would want to do that for you? And girls, he should. Just like we should want to take care of our husbands if the roles were reversed. But it all comes back to, are you bringing him good and not harm all the days of your life? What words, girls, have you said lately about your husband to others? What words, girls, are you saying to your husband in your home? I remember when we first got married, I'd come through all the abuse, being physically, emotionally, mentally beaten and abused. And so when my husband would say to me, where's my beautiful wife? I'd say, I don't know, where is she? For 3 years. And I watched his face on that 3rd year, just totally watched him. I was hurting him because he really believed what he was saying. I had to change who I was. I had to try to figure out how to make it work, how to see myself as he sees me. What's better than that? How to see myself as God sees me. I put Post-it notes in the bathroom, in the drawers at work, in my wallet, on the dashboard of my car. Just to remind me who I was in Christ. So that the next time my husband said to me, where's my beautiful wife? I'd smile, as fake a smile as it was, and say, I'm right here. And see, over the years, girls, I respond better to it now. There are still days that are not so good. But I want to read this one more time for you. Proverbs 31:10-12. A wife of noble character who can find? She is worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good and not harm all the days of her life. Ladies, how are you dealing with your husbands? How do you talk about them? How do you talk to them? It's time to get that in check. And change how you see your husband. He is a gift from God, girls. We need to be grateful for who we have. We need to pray for them. We need to love them. We need to honor them. We need to respect them. And if your husband does not know Jesus, maybe you're in a marriage that you aren't equally yoked, then your example is the best thing that's for him. Set that example. Be that example. Be a godly wife, even though your husband is not a man of God. Praise him. Encourage him. Because, girls, I promise he will want what you have. It may be time, but he'll want what you have. See, because how long did it take you to accept Jesus? And yet you want your husband to do it overnight? It's the right timing. But be persistent. Do it in love. Don't beat him over the head with the word. Just be that living example. Love your husband. Show your husband the respect. Make him feel welcome when he comes home. Make him feel important. Our men need to feel like they're needed. I know we're independent, but sometimes we need to let them know they're needed. I still to this day, even though I can move around on my own, I will find things that when Greg's here, that I'll say, oh, I need your help. I don't really need his help. But I don't want him feeling, and I noticed this when I started getting stronger, I was doing it all on my own. And I noticed he kind of felt like he wasn't needed. He had gone through so much taking care of me that when I got stronger, all of a sudden, oh, don't need it. I can do that. I can do the laundry. You know, I saw that. So there are times now that I'll be doing something, I'll say, oh, I need your help. Because he needs to know that I need him. He needs to know that I love him. And he needs to know that I respect and support him. And that's what your husbands need too, girls. We have to start looking at how to be a godly wife and stop buying into the lies of this world. Because that comment from that lady in front of those other women is something I would have heard in the world hanging out with girlfriends then. Do not let your words be those of destruction for your husband. Do not let your words for your husband be ones that kind of set a precedence and let you see how much you disrespect him. And especially if you're leading, ladies, you need to follow what the Word says. And there is no light footing around this. A woman of God respects her husband. She understands the order of the house. And she brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. My challenge for you today, ladies, is think about how you talk about your husbands, to your husbands, and ask God if there's things that you need to change in your life. Ask God if maybe you need to ask forgiveness to your husband because of the way you've acted. Maybe you shut him out of your life. But ask God to reveal that to you, and he will. Heavenly Father, I just lift these women up to you. I pray, Father, that each one of them will explore their heart and ask you to help them just to love their husband, as your word tells us here, that we are to bring him good and not harm. Lord Jesus, let us be those women of God. Let us be a woman of honor as we reflect you in our lives. In Jesus' name. All right, girls, I'm out of here. It's time for me to head off to a meeting and double check on the chickie babies. Make sure they're still doing good out there. They haven't put their sawdust in their water yet. We'll talk some more about being a godly wife, a godly woman over the rest of the week. But just ask God. But this is really important, girls, because your husband needs a safe place to come. All right? I know I ruffled some feathers, but it's okay. We're supposed to ruffle the feathers. The Bible isn't all peaches and cream and fairies and lollipops. You know, there is times that we really have to evaluate our life. And I really do when I look at this. And Proverbs 31 is a challenge. Because there's areas in here that I don't do well that I need to work on. But this is a process, girls. God's got us, and He'll help us through it if we ask Him. All right? Have a blessed day. We'll catch you tomorrow. Bye.